Okay, gentlemen, at the top of this page, I recommend you have, we're taking notes today, sorry. Now, what's different about this class versus the last one? I'm not sorry, I think it's a good idea to take notes. If it bothers you that you have to take notes, don't worry, just don't take notes. You'll do really lousy on the quizzes and you probably won't pass the class. I'm not going to cry about it. I mean, I might be slightly disappointed, but it's your life, and you get to decide how to live it. I'm not in charge of your life. I'm only in charge of these two 50-minute periods. But these are notes that are going to be on a test or two, and these are notes that you're going to have for your open note quiz. Now, in this class, we're not taking a quiz every darn day like we are in the other one. We take a quiz at the end of every chapter. So whenever we finish chapter 1, like early aviation is the first chapter, as soon as we finish early aviation, then we're going to take a quiz, but it's going to be open book, and it's going to be in class. Okay. So I would write on the top of the, before you write this down, I would write on the top aviation history. If you want to write Flight 102, I don't care, but I recommend you not get it mixed up with your Flight 101 classes. So however you're arranging your notes, make sure you do that. So this is Flight 102, aviation history. Because watch out, because look at that, it says 01A. Ah, that's just like the other class that starts out with a 01A. So you need to be taking your aviation history notes somewhere differently than where you're taking your private pilot stuff. Cool, we got 14 minutes to cover 3 hours of work. I'm just kidding. So the first thing we're going to cover in early aviation is balloons. So we're going to do 01A, early aviation. That's mostly talking about balloons. But before balloons, there was Leonardo Da Vinci. Who in here is doing their, Brian's going to do a thing on Leonardo. Have you done any work yet? You want to come up and talk for a couple of minutes? No? No? Yes, you've done work, and no, you don't want to come up and talk for a couple of minutes? Okay, all right. Well, Leonardo da Vinci was in Italy in the late 1400s, and he was a smart cookie. He could paint, he could sculpt, and he was a mechanical and a mathematical genius. He dissected humans and wrote lots of diagrams of internal anatomy of people. He was awesome. If anybody says the word, oh yeah, Renaissance man, it was totally Leonardo da Vinci. He's also was reincarnated 500 years later as Leo, one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I know. So that's what I'm hoping is someday I'll be dead and reincarnate as a mutant turtle. In any case, he designed a glider. That's an airplane that doesn't have an engine, if you don't know what a glider is. He also designed an air screw, which wouldn't have worked, but it's sort of like a helicopter. And I'm going to show you pictures of here. You don't have to draw the pictures. And he did this in the late 1400s. So that's not 1980s. Anybody remember the 1980s? Disco, big hair bands. You know, all the rock and roll bands had really big hair, like Poison. Does anybody remember and Led Zeppelin? Led Zeppelin didn't have big hair. How about Vixen? Does anybody remember the rock group Vixen? Oh, how about White Snake? How about Great White? They all had big hair. A lot of hairspray. But it's not the 1980s we're talking about. We're talking about 500 years before that, the 1480s. So 1480 is talking about the years. So here's a picture. You don't have to draw it on the test. But here is what this is actually a picture of a model that somebody made. Somebody in modern times made a model based on his diagram of a glider. It might have flown, but it wouldn't have flown. It would have needed a tall hill, and it would have gone down fast. But hey, it was 1480, right? Here's a picture of an air screw. This would have worked a lot better sideways as a propeller. But at least he was trying, so I like the fact that he was trying. Who I like even more is Wan Hu. Now, Wan Hu was in China, and I have to tell you this, although Leonardo da Vinci, he was absolutely a human, and there's lots of proof for it. Wan Hu is as much a legend and myth as it is for sure it was happening. So if somebody says, was Wan Hu a human that actually did this? The answer is maybe. But I like the idea because Wan Hu wanted to fly around 1500. It's not an exact year. But, of course, if you don't know about the history of rockets, the first gunpowder was made in China. The first rockets were made in China. And they used rockets in war and, of course, for decorations. And just so you know, they do not have the 4th of July in China. I don't know. When's Independence Day in China? Does anybody know? Yeah, me neither. In any case, here is a picture. I think I have a picture. Here's one artist's rendition of what he might have looked like. I can't remember. I read about it, but now I've forgotten how many rockets. Could you see trying to light all the fuses on those rockets simultaneously? What if you only got half of them lit and they went off? You think this would go up straight? No. Just for fun, you can write it in the side of your notes. I won't ask you, but on a TV program called The Mythbusters, type in Mythbusters Wan Hu, and they put their dummy on a chair and tried to light all the rockets. It was that dummy was not very happy. So it's probable that if Wan Hu actually tried to do this, he probably died. Here's another artist's rendition of rockets and a kite, using a kite to make lift. Whether it really happened, I don't know, but the fact that somebody was thinking about it 500 years ago to go flying with rockets, I think that's awesome. All right, let's go back to people that actually flew machines for the very first time. And just so you know, jumping off a cliff does not count as flying. And if you're thinking about Icarus, that was another myth. Montgolfier. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it. That's in France. It's a French name, Montgolfier. They built the world's first hot air balloons that carried humans. And they were in France. See, I'm just giving you the important parts. I got pictures here in a minute. First, they sent up some animals. I think it was like a chicken and a sheep and I can't remember. It's a chicken and a sheep and a goat, something like that. It definitely had a chicken and a sheep. Chickens can't fly, can they? Not very well. If you drop them out of a helicopter, will the chicken die, or will it be able to flap its wings enough that it'll live? I think we ought to have an experiment. Sorry, it's not in the budget to kill chickens. All right. However, what I think is the most important about the Montgolfier brothers is they built a balloon, and the very first flight of a machine on planet Earth that had a human in it was in 1783. That's about almost 240 years ago, 235 years ago. 235 years ago or so. The first time a human ever lifted off of the surface of the planet was in 1783 in France, and it was built by the Montgolfier brothers. They were taking like paper bags and sticking them in over above a fire, and it would fill with smoke, and they'd let go, and it would lift up, and they thought it was a property of the smoke. There's like some magic property, and they probably weren't thinking magic, but there's something about that smoke. People didn't figure out until later that it wasn't the fact that it was smoke, it was the fact that hot air is less dense and less dense air rises. But when they first started doing this, they were like throwing straw and other stuff on the fire to make more smoke because they thought it was something having to do with the smoke, when in reality it was just less dense air because the air was hot. So here's a diagram of a Montgolfier balloon. You can see there's some people in there. Looks like little people. It's not that great of a picture diagram. Also, around the same time, some people had already figured out, some scientist somewhere had figured out that hydrogen is less dense than air, and hydrogen will rise. So somebody thought, you know what, let's put some hydrogen in a bag. And there's a guy named Charles and a guy named Robert. So these three guys, a guy last name of Charles and two people named Robert, they built a hydrogen balloon. And hydrogen actually is less dense than helium. It actually works better to lift than helium does. There is a downside to hydrogen in that if you breathe in hydrogen and it goes across your voice box and you exhale, it does not make you sound like Donald Duck. So that's a real big disadvantage of hydrogen. Because helium, if you breathe it in, it tightens up your vocal cords and it makes you sound like Donald Duck. Have you ever noticed that? How many people have breathed in a helium balloon and then tried to talk? Well, yeah, all right. If you do that with hydrogen, it doesn't work. So that's a downside to hydrogen. Well, there's other downsides, but we'll cover them on another day. Wow, check it out. It's France again. The first hydrogen balloon with people in it was launched in France. It got to 9,000 feet. So for a while, the world record of how high you could go was in a hydrogen balloon. The downside of hot air balloons is they cool down and then they land. Hydrogen balloons, the temperature doesn't matter. And you'll notice it was the same year. It was later, but it was still in 1783. So earlier in 1783, the Montgolfier brothers in France, first humans on a balloon, 1783. Later the same year, 1783, Charles and the Robert brothers flew a hydrogen balloon with people in it. Not very long after the Montgolfier brothers did it. So wow, it's like we invented airplanes and helicopters. Nah, it's not quite like that. So I got a picture. Here is an artist rendition. They built a model. I don't think the gondola was probably that big. But you notice the balloon is pretty round where the hydrogen is. No sheeps or pigs or chickens. Maybe that was it. Maybe the first flight was a chicken, a sheep, and a pig. I wonder. I'll have to look that up. All right. So we're going to talk about another first. The first person to successfully use a parachute, his name was Gagarin. Is anybody familiar with Japanese monster movies? Anybody ever seen a Godzilla movie? Oh, Godzilla? Is that what you were going to say? Oh, Godzilla? Okay. They're cheesy. In fact, there's some cheese that you could swim in it. But there's actually a Japanese monster called Gamera. He's definitely my favorite Japanese monster. Has anybody ever heard of Gamera? Gamera. Gamera. The giant flying turtle? He pulls in his head and his arms, and flame comes out, and he spins around, and the flame comes out and makes him spin around. He can not only fly through the atmosphere, he can fly in freaking space. So Gamera is absolutely my favorite Japanese monster, and the first Japanese monster movie I ever saw was a Gamera movie. But that's different spelling than Gagarin, and just so you know, Gamera was not from France. Where do you think this guy was? Oh, holy mackerel, from France. So here's the first parachute drop with a human in it. Did it from a balloon, but now we're talking about 14 years later in 1797. Many years later. And I got a nice picture I'll show you here. I know you want to write that stuff down. I'm trying to keep these bullet statements really short so you don't have to write down a whole lot. So here would be a good question. It would be who was the first person that had a successful parachute drop as a human? You'd say Gagarin. What country? France. What year? 1797. How many people want to memorize lots of facts like that to remain seated? Okay, good. We'll just run the class like that. You guys don't jump up fast enough. How am I supposed to get an accurate rendition of what your perspective is? So here's a drawing of what they think. He didn't have a harness on his body. He was actually in a basket with a flag. Woohoo! I'm not dead yet. Oh, all right. Look, we got 2 more minutes. So the first time military balloons, any kind of aviation whatsoever, a flying machine, the very first time with a human in it was balloons. Can anybody think of the first time aviation was used in war? I already said it. What country was it in? No, the first time aviation, there was no humans. Yeah, the Chinese had rockets. They used rockets as mortars. Catch things on fire. But no humans were attached to the rockets unless it was Wan Hu. So Napoleon, does anybody know what country Napoleon is from? Man, France is rocking it in early aviation. They didn't do anything with them than send people up with binoculars and telescopes so they could call down below and say, hey, the bad guys are over there. So it was just an observation balloon. It was a hydrogen balloon, so it could go up, and if you sealed your bag up pretty good and your bag didn't leak, you could stay up for a long time. So you had to bring water and sandwiches. And Crevassier. Does anybody know what Crevassier? Do you know what Crevassier is? You can guess. It's 40 proof. They distill wine, and it's like brandy. They take wine and then distill it until it's 40%, 80 proof. Has anybody ever seen that Saturday Night Live skit called The Ladies' Man? The ladies, you got to go to YouTube and type in The Ladies' Man, and then type in FNL, the FNL skit, and you'll find The Ladies' Man, and he likes to drink Crevassier, which is made in France. So if I was going to go up in a balloon during war and people were shooting at me, and I had my choice of sandwiches and water, or sandwiches and Crevassier, think about what you would choose. In any case, it was the very first time a flying machine with humans were used in war, and there it is, 1794. So tomorrow at 1:20, if you haven't turned in this piece of paper with your parent's signature on it off of the syllabi, It's due tomorrow at 1:20, and then at 1:20 we're going to take a quiz open note in the first in private pilot ground school. And all the other paperwork you got to bring back. And I know, I'm sorry, I apologize. I added a blue piece of paper. So everyone in here now has something to bring back tomorrow. I will see you all tomorrow.